the latest on automatic qualifiers. Let me tell you where I stand. And I don't know that a decision is going to be made anytime soon, but automatic qualifiers into the college football playoff. There are some people that want everybody to be, they want 4 or 5 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten and the SEC. There are others that don't want any automatic qualifiers other than conference champions. That's where I lean. I think it incentivizes winning the conference, but at the same time, you get simply the best dozen or 16 teams if they go to that. That's where I would go. Your power conferences, if you win that, you make it. I would actually maybe even consider a group of 5, potentially. But other than that, I just want a committee, or I'd actually prefer an equation, a formula, but I just want the 12 best teams. And I really don't care if they're in the Big Ten or SEC other than the champions.
Yes. So basically going into last week, so let's put this out. 12-team playoff this year. There was a 100% guarantee that it's going to expand to 14 or 16 next year. The SEC and Big Ten completely control the playoff. Everybody else that's taken part, the SEC and the Big Ten are just saying we're welcoming you in, but we don't have to. That's how this is working. And so going into last week, it seemed like both the SEC and the Big Ten were on board with automatic qualifiers. So the automatic qualifiers would be automatically 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams, 2 ACC teams, 2 Big 12 teams, 1 group of 5 team. That is 13 teams automatically in from different conferences or whatever, no matter what. And then depending on 14 or 16, 1 at-large bid, which that at-large bid could go to Notre Dame if they're in the top 14, or it could go to somebody else. And then obviously you have 2 if it were 16. So that's how the automatic qualifiers would work. The SEC last week seemed to be on board with the Big Ten for that. But then spring meetings in Destin happened and things got contentious with Greg Sankey. And walking out of those spring meetings, the SEC is now no longer on board with the automatic qualifiers model. They're on board with your model, Dave, which is 5 automatic conference champions, the top 5 conference champions, which gets you the power 4 teams in, ACC, Big 12, SEC, and Big 10, and then a group of 5 champions. So the top 5 conference champions, and then the top 11 teams after that. Basically, that's the model.
The group of 5 thing going to happen?
Group of 5 is in. No matter, they're going to have a team. They're going to have a team in, no matter what. So
I mean, I like it to give them a shot, but I think they're going to get the stuffing beat out.
Well, that's why they're doing it. The reason the SEC wants the group of 5 team to get in is so they can shut up about complaining, and no one can complain about the lack of legitimacy when they get the you-know-what beat out of them.
I don't think that's going to go well for those guys. I hate that.
I mean, I don't think it'll go much better for the ACC. They're closer to the group of 5 than they are the SEC or Big 10.
I don't know that Clemson's had some pretty good teams. I think you're short selling them a little.
They look at them last year in their first round game. They didn't belong in the playoff, and neither did SMU. Was the highest ranked ACC team last year.
What if I go back to? I know this is almost before your time. Florida State, Miami. I mean, they were pretty good.
You're living in the 1990s.
I know, but we're talking about the whole history.
It's different now. The revenue is totally different. Revenue was a little more spread out back then. SEC and Big Ten are gobbling up all the money. The other conferences just can't compete. AZ is locked into a terrible deal. By the way, the SEC is in a pretty bad deal. ACC is significantly worse. So basically, there are a few reasons the SEC torpedoed and backed off the automatic qualifiers last week.
Okay, why?
And this is where we'll play hot or cold. So you tell me if you think this is a valid reason for the SEC. All right, here's the first reason they backed off. The automatic qualifiers opens the door for 9 SEC games. And the reason it does is because if you have automatic qualifiers, you don't have to worry about being punished for tough non-conference games. Does that make sense? So
yeah, sort of. I don't know that the two should be linked. You and I talked about it at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting.
They are.
I mean, to me, they're 2 completely separate issues.
Right, but see, the thing is, the SEC doesn't want. Here's where this is coming from. The Big Ten doesn't. The reason the Big Ten wants the automatic qualifiers is they think the SEC has an unfair advantage not playing 8-9 conference games. Basically, not every SEC team wants to go to 9 conference games. And the reason is, if you're a Kentucky, you want those 4 patsies or 3 patsies or whatever to try to get to 6 wins every year to get to a bowl game. On top, but ADs at bigger schools do want 9 conference games because guess what, Dave? with the 9 conference games for the schools, not the conference, comes a little bit extra revenue for a bigger game. That's about $5 million extra in revenue for the ADs of the schools. So the biggest problem with this, one of the biggest reasons the SEC backed off, they can't come to an agreement over 8 or 9 conference games yet.
No, but I would argue this, Caleb. It would incentivize programs to play a tougher schedule if you didn't have any automatic qualifiers other than conference champion. Would you agree with that?
No, in that because of last year. Look at what the committee did last year. They let Indiana in when Indiana played the 8 worst teams in the Big Ten and then 3 group of 5 non-conference games, the easiest schedule possible. And many SEC teams look at that and say, well, wait a minute here. Like, you're saying we only play 8 conference games, but our 8 conference games are way tougher than Indiana's 9 were. And
let me ask you this, just philosophically. A conference getting 4 teams into a 12-team playoff, doesn't that seem a little silly?
No. It would be 14 or 16.
Okay. Nevertheless, that's 25% of the playoff from one conference.
Yeah, but Dave, let's be honest. The SEC, well, here's the thing. The SEC and Big Ten are going to have 4 teams in every year anyway. I mean, in a 14-team playoff, if you just straight seeded 1 through 14 or even did automatic conference champions, the SEC and Big Ten would have 4 of those teams each. I'll just tell you that.
The message board has been fantastic. It's been a mix of volleyball, shorts, and Special Olympics.
So, Dave, just curious before we move on, are you hot or cold on that? You are cold on that as any reason to back out of any sort of college football playoff, right?
Conference. I'm hot on conference champions making it. No automatic qualifiers other than that, except for the group of 5. I'm also hot on 9 conference games because it legitimizes everyone's schedule. And who doesn't want to see more SEC versus SEC at the end of the day? Do you want to see Tennessee play Mississippi State, which isn't marquee, but it's better than Tennessee playing Chattanooga?
But you're cold on those 2 things being linked, is what I'm saying.
Yes. I don't understand that at all.
Okay. Okay, he looks at Joey Aguilar like Diego Pavia. Interesting conversation to have. I could see that. I could see that, Timothy, which would be a very good sign for Tennessee.
They didn't go get Diego Pavia.
That's actually a good point. All right, another one. Here's another reason the SEC was turned off the automatic qualifier. If you did the automatic qualifier model, you wouldn't have an SEC championship game. You would have the SEC championship weekend would be play-in games for like 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you have like 3 play 6 and 4 play 5, and they would have to play their way into the college football playoff and just the number 1 team with the best record in the regular season would be the SEC champion.
Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. A Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, Banks & Jones. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. You were going to say?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, are you hot or cold on that? Are you hot or cold on that as a reason? The conference, the 3-6 versus 4-5 model. Like, are you hot? Basically, coaches and athletic directors are against play-in games. They'd rather conference championship games just be conference championship games.
I think winning the conference still means something, so I'm going to say hot. I think that. Wait, is that your question? Playing in the conference?
Basically, the coaches don't want to see the conference championship games go for the SEC.
I'm hot on that.
Okay, fair enough. And then here's the last one, and here's why I actually think, with hot or cold, one of the biggest reasons. And you tell me what you think. The SEC doesn't like the automatic qualifier model because they think they can get more teams in a 16-team playoff. I mean, just look at last year. If you did the 5+11 model instead of the automatic qualifier, you wouldn't have had 4 SEC teams in. You would have had 6.
Yep, fair point. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see a committee that has the same number of Big Ten schools for the most part and the same number of SEC schools.
Right, but that's why the SEC has to come to the table for the automatic qualifier. They're going to torpedo this, and this is the other part. This is actually the last part. It's funny you brought that up. The SEC is fighting hard for a formula more than a committee. They don't want a committee. They want a formula.
I'm all for a formula.